Miami Condo Mondays is a live podcast on the first workday of the week at 4 p.m. South Florida time. The program features former journalist and current Wall Street consultant Peter Zaleski of the Miami Condo Investing Club and former lender and veteran condo broker Jenny Huertas of CVRRealty.com. Recorded weekly in greater downtown Miami, this 1-hour discussion will provide a refreshing and sometimes controversial perspective on the state of the South Florida condo market from a pair of seasoned real estate professionals who do not always agree. The program won't tell you what to think about the South Florida condo market, but will give you something to think about before buying, selling, taking listings, or financing units. This podcast is not authorized by the Miami real estate industry and will quite possibly annoy many of its figureheads. Welcome to this week's episode of Miami Condo Mondays, broadcast live on the social media accounts of Peter Zaleski and Jenny Huertas.
Happy Monday, Miami. This is Miami Condo Mondays, a real estate podcast. What's going on in the Tri-County, South Florida area of Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County. This week, we're talking about Miami Beach. Miami Beach, that worldwide known destination. That destination where all the celebrities come. That destination where people love the party. That destination, which is tied back to Carl Fisher. Well, it hasn't been a very good summer for Miami Beach. What we're finding is ultimately supply is up, pending sales are down, and so are asking prices. We're going to get into all of it. We're going to tell you what's happening, why it's happening. We're going to give you an outlook of what we think is going to go on as we go ahead and we take a look halfway through the summer buying season, which goes from May through October. I'm Peter Zaleski, condo consultant, expert witness, founder of the Miami Condo Investment Club, joined here by my partner, my co-host, the broker owner of CVR Realty, no one else but Jenny Huertas. Check out her website, CVRRealty.com. Jenny, what the hell happened? Miami Beach is supposed to be the destination. You know what? They're having a lot of trouble this summer. I thought everybody comes to Miami Beach. They always want to be here. Not this summer. And if they're coming, they're sure as heck not buying condos.
Yeah, it's great. It's actually great news for buyers. So I'm happy. You know, it's about time. I mean, prices were overinflated.
Well, you know, I thought, though, Miami Beach was supposed to be this top destination. This was going on. That's going on. Jenny, you know, we've been for the last few weeks. Well, actually, not a few weeks, 6 weeks or so. No, 4 weeks. We've been going through and we've been taking a look at all the data. We took a look at the two key markets per county in this Tri-County, South Florida area of Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County. We looked at Boca Raton. We looked at downtown West Palm Beach and Palm Beach Island. We looked at Hollywood, Hallandale. We looked at downtown Fort Lauderdale and the beach. We looked at greater downtown Miami, and we looked at Miami Beach. Jenny, short of downtown West Palm Beach and Palm Beach Island because of the Mar-a-Lago effect, the fact that President Trump spends practically every weekend in Palm Beach Island, just a little causeway ride away from downtown West Palm Beach and just down the street from the brand newly named President Donald J. Trump Airport. Every other major market in South Florida is struggling. Not Palm Beach County, though, because of the Mar-a-Lago effect. People want to be close to the money, close to the power. Any surprises there, Jenna? That's pretty much what we called coming in, even though we had the World Cup. Jenny, 6 weeks. We had 7 matches over at Hard Rock Stadium, 450,000 people. We had people from Norway. We had people from England. We had them from France. We had them from Uruguay. We had them from Cape Verde. We had them from Argentina. We had them from Portugal. We had Colombia. We had everybody here. And pending sales fell during the pandemic. Were people just simply too busy enjoying the World Cup, probably for free because they don't want to pay the tickets? Or is there simply a lack of interest in condos in South Florida, and especially Miami Beach, which is just plummeting in terms of our Miami Beach Condo Cliff Index, both on the vintage side, which is those condos 30 years old or older, under greater scrutiny, big special assessments, as well as the overall market. Jen, what do you make of it? I thought everybody's coming to town. You got 450,000 people going to Hard Rock Stadium up there in Miami Gardens off 199th and Northwest 27th Avenue. Nobody was buying condos.
Yeah, unfortunately, those events don't translate into buyers, at least in the amount that we wish. Number one. Number two, we're living moments in the economy. It's a worldwide crisis. The people don't know what to do. Maybe they will consider it, but not at the moment because it's so volatile. So that could be a reason. But definitely interest in pricing I've seen in Miami Beach. So suddenly it's more attractive than probably greater downtown Miami in some instances. So that'd be opportunity for buyers. So I'm happy to see those numbers that corroborate what I've seen in the daily basis. Miami Beach has a lot of inventory that is 30 years or older. So
Vintage,
we have
we
a
call
lot
it. We
of
call it
a lot of
vintage.
vintage there.
Nice name to mean old product.
Not that old, but it would be like antique. But actually, there are some buildings that are close to 100 years old as well in Miami Beach.
Jenny, 69% of the 1,500 condos on the market in Miami Beach, 69% are at least 30 years old.
Exactly. And also, it's a very eclectic sort of product. We have multi-million dollars places as well as we had $200,000 small studios, Art Deco style, no parking, no closet. Probably jealousy windows. If it's being updated, it's a little bit more of the money. But, it depends on what you're looking for. Actually, if you ask me, it's a market for me that you can find a lot of different pricing. So it's a market you can tell that is for everybody.
Yeah, it's a market for everybody, and it's a big market that's been around for everybody. Jenny, next month, we are going to be recognizing the 100-year anniversary of the Great Miami Hurricane. Came rolling through, I think it was September the 18th, 1926. Once that storm came through, John, that was pretty much it. Put a fork in it. The great Florida land boom of the 1920s. It all basically come to a screeching halt and led to dismal end for developers like Miami Beach's is Carl Fisher, the guy who put Miami Beach on the map. George Merrick over in Coral Gables, Addison Miser up in Boca Raton. Next month, roughly a month from now, is when that hurricane hit, and it all sort of changed there. Jenny, was also interesting about that hurricane when it came rolling through, and some say it was a Cat 5, and the real destruction and death that came of it wasn't on the front end of the hurricane. It was on the back end. Once the storm came rolling through, and if anybody's never been through a hurricane, you got an eye. So you get hit by the first end, then it's calm, and then you get hit by the second end. A lot of people went out. They were driving on the causeway. You had wooden causeway connecting mainland Miami over to Miami Beach, which is now like the Venetian Causeway, and people basically just got blown away. They got flooded out. The storm was such, I was reading about it, according to the National Hurricane Center, the hurricane hit between what is greater downtown Miami and South Miami. That's basically where the storm came through. That's what led to so many people basically dying. And after that, Miami never came back. But when they did try to come back, John, you know what they did at Miami Beach? They needed a way because they realized they were going to lose the bourgeoisie, the fat cats, if you will, the people taking Henry Flagler's train down to Miami Beach. Ultimately, they would have taken it to Key West. While the working class stiffs, if you will, they were coming in on a rail line called Seaboard, Airline Rail. Seaboard came on the west side, everybody. If you guys ever been around Miami International Airport on the south side, there's railroad track. That's where the Seaboard line was coming in. And they were bringing in the commoners. So, Jen, the bourgeoisie, they get pushed by the wayside. You get the common Joe coming down. The hurricane had hit. So what they decided to do is they're like, all right, we need to put up something. We can't spend the money building all these mansions, which is what used to dot Miami Beach. So they looked for a cheap, easy way to put up just like, I don't know what you want to call it, not Airbnb, but something very basic. Maybe today you'd call it like a Citizens M type of concept or an IBIS if you guys, anybody travels.
Right.
So what they did is they used they were using cement instead of wood, and they were using, I don't know if it was rebar, they were using some sort of steel, and to make it look good, they put some nice Art Deco designs on it. Jenny, the Art Deco district of South Beach is a result of the Great Hurricane 1926 and a cheap alternative, stable way to build housing for the commoner who was coming down here, not the bourgeoisie, not the fat cats, not today's Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, not Larry Page of Google, definitely not Alex Karp of Palantir, not Ken Griffin from Citadel. So Art Deco, which everybody loves, which we're going to be talking about, that is all the result of the hurricane that hit, and a cheap and easy way to kind of slap it up, put some nice paint on it, and call it a day.
Yes, actually, the developers back then, they wanted to knock it down and make it different buildings, but as association, protected.
Yeah. This was the 1980s. The 1980s. Miami Beach, 1990s, late 80s, 90s, 1990s. Yeah, Miami Beach is struggling. Remember, everybody, when we had the Mariel boat lift, which occurred in 1980, people come flooding in. More than 100,000 people showed up in Miami over the course of about 6-month period or so. And as a result, many people were, the government had to find some place to put them. Temporarily, they had them under the interstate. They had them at parks. They also put them on Miami Beach. So Miami Beach kind of ran through a bunch of different things. Then, because they were trying to jumpstart Miami Beach, they were going to knock it all down, put up a bunch of generic looking condo towers. A group got together. They stopped it, a woman called Barbara Kapman, and they stopped it. They were able to preserve these Art Decos and ultimately put it on the map. Now it's one of the most recognizable districts in the world. And that's why a lot of people come here to Miami Beach, besides partying and all the pretty people.
No, yeah, exactly. I'm glad that happened because it's very charming. It's a great place to take pictures. It takes you back in the time. It's actually beautiful that they did that and they protected that area. But because of that, the zoning never went up all the way. So Miami Beach is a middle or low rise. It's never super tall. There are exceptions. South of Fifth, they were able to change on that because they didn't have as much of that structure there. And in some exceptions, like Five Park, the Give Park, for going up in the tower, there are a few of them, but not as it is in greater downtown Miami. So I think it's a place for people that really enjoy the small town living. So I think it's a good option to the city.
And for the longest time, there was a little bit of a, what do you want to call it, pretentiousness about people living in Miami Beach. They would call people who drove over the Causeway kids, who would come rolling in and try to go to the bars or whatever on the weekend and then piss off and go back to the mainland. There was a real movement where whether you were a beach resident or you lived somewhere else. Jenny, you lived in Miami Beach.
Yes, it's true. This is so true. But with the growth of the city, especially the downtown Miami, Brickell, downtown, Wynwood, and all these alternative areas, especially the district, 24 hours district for party in 11th Street, that brought that stole that sort of a crowd into the city. Now the people from the beach have to come back here to have a real good party. It's different there. It's just completely different. Before, everything was centralized there. Washington Avenue had all the bars, all the discotheques, everything. And then they don't have it anymore because they have all these places in the city. So now probably the city people is going to say, what are you guys doing here? Don't get me wrong. I have friends in Miami Beach, as they say, I never crossed that bridge. It's like, I had so much to do in Miami Beach that I had zero interest in going there. So still a little bit of that.
Yeah, still a little bit of that, exactly. Jen, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to pull up a map. I'm going to show everybody Miami Beach just so we all get a sense of it. And then from there, we're going to get into some of the data. I should tell everybody you're watching this live. As a result, we're sharing everything for free. Once the podcast's over, we're going to go ahead. We're going to edit it. We're going to do it for sound. We're going to edit it for template, and we'll make it available. It'll be available on demand. The thing is, though, you got to be a member of the Miami Condo Investing Club in order to gain access to all of it. So if anybody's interested in getting straightforward information, real-time market intelligence, not Chamber of Commerce talk, not sell-side hyperbole about trees growing to the moon, consider joining the Miami Condo Investing Club. We're always collecting data. We're always analyzing it. We're giving you straightforward information, whether you're a DIY buyer looking to do it yourself, whether you're a buyer working with a broker, could be a seller, a listing agent, you can't move your product, could be a lender, financing projects, could be a regulator up in Tallahassee, Orlando, Washington, D.C., trying to figure out what the heck is going on in the market. You're all invited, including people who are curious and gadflies. We'd love to have everybody. You want to get more information on the club? Go to MiamiCondo.club. Remember, Miami Condo Investing Club, we started in the beginning of 2024 in anticipation of where we are today, which is the Florida Condo Association Financial Club, a situation where, as a result of the Surfside condo collapse, it is leading to all types of repercussions, primarily negative for sellers, but creating opportunities for buyers. Something we've been documenting, something we created an index for so we could track what was going on in the market real time. Not closed sales data, which comes out 30, 60, 90, 120 days after the deal closes, but more so week over week analysis so you can get an idea which markets are hot and which markets are not. It's based on active listings and pending sales. So remember, if you want to watch this on demand after this live broadcast, you got to be a member of the club, MiamiCondo.club. Jenny, let's go ahead and share our map. We'll give everybody an idea of Miami Beach. How's that sound?
Let's do it.
All right, so I'm sharing my screen right now, and we got it right there. Here we go, everybody. All right, so we are looking at Miami. You guys see Miami? See down here, you got South Point Park. South Point is basically zero, if you will. And as you go north up this barrier island, street numbers are going to go up. So Miami Beach will go from 0, which is basically around here. Let me see if I can reposition this for my purposes. Let's see here. Here we go. So this street here, if you guys can make that out, is going to be, this is 5th. So when you come from the mainland, the Perez Art Museum, you come along this causeway. Jenny, by the way, causeway opened 1920, just to give you context, 1920. Remember, everybody, what's interesting about Miami Beach, it was really going in the 1920s. Yeah, and, but the thing is, we had the Volstead Act in the United States. Alcohol was permitted. But Carl Fisher, the guy who's known for putting Miami Beach on the map, for creating it, he was a rum runner, according to a book called Bubble in the Sun. Because liquor was illegal, what people would do is, and check out this map, they would go outside of U.S. territory, somewhere out here, just to show you. You guys see Bimini? See Bimini over here? So right when you got past international waters, is like 4 miles out or so. I don't know what it was at the time. But they would set up a series of boats. They'd have them all tied together. You come there to buy your rum, almost like you're going to, maybe like in the Grove, or you're going to one of these farmers markets up in North Beach or something. You'd buy your rum. You had extra cash. They had a boat just for gambling. They had another one where it was a brothel. So you did whatever you did. All of the booze was coming down out of Bimini. It was coming out of the Bahamas. It was coming out of the UK. It was coming from Canada. They sent it all here. Guys would pick it up, then they would bring it back in. So the rest of the country was supposedly dry and not drinking. Miami Beach and Florida was peddling booze. And that was one of the reasons, some would argue, which we had the great 1920s Florida land boom. So you guys can see how close it was. But here's basically Miami Beach, John. So if you guys notice, we got a place called Fisher Island. Then we got South Beach, in basically 3 neighborhoods in Miami Beach. There's going to be South Beach, Middle Beach, and North Beach. So Jenny, Fisher Island, as well as South Beach, they were connected. That was one. Yeah. That was one island. And then in about 1905 or so, federal government cut this, and they dumped the dredging. Before they did the cut, 1905 or so, when you came into Miami, you had to sail around Key Biscayne. That's why there's a lighthouse on Key Biscayne. You sail around, you have to meander your way through Biscayne Bay, and ultimately you end up at downtown Miami. The port was where we got the Perez Art Museum, and we got the Philip Roth Science Museum. Just to kind of give you guys perspective. So they cut this and create this Fisher Island, and then you had Miami Beach. Fisher Island's named after Carl Fisher. Supposedly he owned it at one point. So did the first African-American millionaire in Florida. It was, I'm blanking on it. Dorsey. Dorsey was his last name. But Fisher Island, they named it after him. But, Carl Fisher had the dirt. He traded it for a yacht with old man Vanderbilt, and was able to get his, basically get the yacht, and Vanderbilt took the island. And lo and behold, it's taken forever and ever and ever, but it ultimately comes together. So Jen, as we go up here in South Beach, or in Miami Beach, you're going to have the 3 neighborhoods. You got South Beach, which would be down here. Then you're going to have Middle Beach, and then you're going to have the North Beach area. And what's interesting, John, a lot of these islands in and around here, these are all man-made. Carl Fisher, the guy who was a gearhead, he was a car freak, a fanatic. He used to sell bicycles. He fixed bicycles. Then he moved into cars. He came up with an invention, patented it, and ultimately sold it. Had to do with headlights. Took his cash. He was a young guy. He was a running and gunner. And he sets the Indianapolis 500. He's the one who pushed forward the Dixie Highway. Was privately created, the Dixie Highway. It was a series of roads that all connected, ultimately brought it to Miami. Why did he do it? Because Carl Fisher was coming on to Indiana. He wanted a way to bring people down to Miami so he could peddle them real estate. Some of that real estate, John, it didn't really exist. They took the dredging of the bay and they created it. A perfect area, West Avenue, everybody. West Avenue was created with dredging from Biscayne Bay, just like Star Island was, just like all of these islands. These are all man-made islands, everybody, if you guys can check that out on the map.
Yes, so the millionaires' mansions are on those islands, on those 3 or 4 islands in the middle of the causeway.
That's right. That's right. So Here we have Fifth Street. Everything south of Fifth is known south of Fifth. That's probably where luxury condo pricing starts. If you guys want to look Florida wide, this is where it'll start. And as you move away from it, it's going to go down. Then you're going to have the South Beach area. The way we define it, we like to go off of physical landmarks. It'll basically go to 41st Street Causeway, which is basically the Julia Tuttle Causeway. So it'll jump you in at about 41st Street. So we call all of this South Beach. Then from 41st up to 63rd, where you'll have another causeway, which is going to be right over here, a little bridge. Whoops, sorry. Right over here, that'll be Middle Beach. And then we're going to have the North Beach area, which will go all the way up to Surfside. Borders the actual site where the Champlain Towers South went down. That'll be the northern boundary, if you will, of Miami Beach, over at 87th Terrace, right up here.
87, yeah.
Yep. So Jen, the way I look at Miami Beach is south of Fifth is going to be the fat cats who want to be close to the pretty people, but they don't necessarily want to put up with them. So they live south of Fifth. Then you're going to have South Beach, which would pretty much be everybody who's come to Miami Beach and they want to party and they know this. Maybe they're in videos. Maybe they're bartenders. They could be performers. They could be only fan created. It could be whatever. They're in South Beach. People a little bit long in the tooth, they're going to be more in Middle Beach. And then ultimately North Beach is probably going to be more of your laborers, your, it's got a big Argentinian community that was started after the dollar peso devaluation occurred 25 years ago or so in Argentina. So you got a big Argentinian community, but basically everybody, the international jet setter is going to be in South Beach. The more conservative types, they're going to be in Middle Beach. North Beach will be more your workers. And then south of Fifth is going to be like probably the most expensive condos in Miami Beach. Jenny, am I getting anything wrong?
No, perfectly said.
Okay, perfect. So you guys, we can all see this. So let's go ahead now and let's jump into some of our numbers. So I'm going to stop sharing and let me pull up another screen, Jen. Here we go. Let's go with, I'll tell you what, why don't we start off with where do we stand right now? And like I said, everybody, we got an index. We created this index January 1st, 2025. We track what is going on in Miami Beach on a month-over-month basis. For Miami-Dade County, for Broward County, for Palm Beach County, as well as South Florida, we do it weekly. This one we're doing monthly, simply because we have 23 markets we're tracking overall, as well as vintage. It can get a little bit overwhelming. So, but monthly, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to show you what is going on in Miami Beach. So, you know what, John? I think we'll start off with charts. What do you think? Line charts?
Yes, let's do charts.
Okay, so we're going to start with line charts. So let me go ahead and share this line chart with everybody. Bear with me. Here we go. All right, so this is basically the last, since January 1st of 2025. Why was it January 1st, 2025? Because this is when all of the rules were kicking in regarding inspections, everybody. If you buy a condo in Florida now, it has to have an inspection done every 10 years called the Structural Integrity Reserve Study. And at year 30, it's got to have a milestone inspection, which comes for a building that's at least 30 years old or older. These milestone inspections put that condo into a different category. It's a little bit more higher risk, and it's probably going to mean more special assessments. However, some of these vintage condos, and that's what we call them, these are actually the most popular product that people are seeking out. Why? They tend to be cheaper, about 40% cheaper than the overall market. They also tend to be better located. They were built up until 1996, so there was more land to choose from. Better location, about 40% cheaper, generally speaking, going on the asking price on the way in. Jenny, they're also bigger. A one bedroom in some of these vintage condos is like 1,200 square feet versus a two bed, which is about 2,000. Today, a one bed, 750 square feet, a two bed's 1,000 square feet. And then Jenny, while it might not be the case necessarily in Miami Beach, but these vintage condos, the high rises, they're going to give you the ability to self-park. You don't have to give it to a valet. You don't have to notify the valet in advance that you're coming down and have your car ready. You do not have to wait when you get down there. You basically take the elevator, you get in your car, and you drive off. That's suddenly a luxury, where back in the day, in these vintage condos, that was pretty much the norm.
Yeah, absolutely. In the size, except for Art Deco, obviously, and the amenities, like Middle Beach is famous for that. They replaced, that's why the people from the houses went to live in this place. So they have the space, the pool, the services. Most of them have a restaurant on the site, but you need the car to go anywhere. That's in Middle Beach. So it's very eclectic, and that's why Miami Beach is such an interesting market.
It is an interesting market. It's pretty much dominated by condos. You'll have them all different sizes. Like Jenny said, you'll have small little studios, and then you'll also have expansive ones. You'll have condo buildings where every unit is an entire floor. So we got all of the variety of different condos. So Jen, looking at the line chart here, black is going to be the overall market. Blue is going to be the vintage condos. These are the ones at least 30 years old or older. By the way, everybody, I should tell you, when these condos go through these milestone inspections, based on our best estimates, once the licensed architect or the licensed engineer who's conducting the study, once they sign off, they're then going to give their findings to somebody within their entity, their organization, which is going to assign a dollar amount in terms of fixing stuff. All that's put together, they put a bow on it to give it to the condo board. In 2026, the condo board has to begin funding it and moving forward to fix this stuff. Jenny, this happens at the year 30, when Champlain Tower went down back on June 24th of 2021. It was 40 years old. Nearly 100 people died. $1 billion settlement was paid out to the families of victims. The state's requiring these inspections to be done in year 30. There are some exceptions to year 25, but I don't want to get into it. Basically, year 30, you got to have these inspections done, and then you got to start doing the work. So you got big special assessments. Jen, our best guesstimate, if that building's up to 4 stories, it's 25 grand per unit special assessment. You got a year to pay. If it's 5 to 14 stories, call it $65,000 per unit, and at least 15 stories is $100,000 per unit is our best guesstimate. And you know, if the condo baby association, the people aren't well off, they can actually take out a loan. The problem is the interest is 9, 10, 11, 12%. So it just becomes so much more expensive to own a condo. However, if you're a buyer coming in with fresh cash and you got a seller who's got to get out, you might have the ability to negotiate deep deals.
Yes, exactly. Especially because most of associations require that the seller pays for the special assessment that is in place. Most of them, almost 100% is mandatory. So that's part of the deal, obviously, on the pricing. But you have the ability to negotiate a lot of different things. Not just the special assessment, but other factors like new kitchen or new bathrooms or whatever the case might be. It's definitely a market where you can negotiate. That depends on the price, obviously. If it's what price, then not much. But if it's the prices that we've seen, most definitely negotiate.
Well, and you know what I say about negotiate? I say low ball, low ball, low ball. That's where I think we are in the market, especially, Jenny, where we are right now. You know, coming into the summer, and the summer buying season goes from May to October. We told everybody the World Cup, we didn't think it was going to be anything. Why? Because of affordability. Why? Because prices are starting to come down. You don't know where the bottom is. You don't know about you don't want to catch a falling knife. And we also thought that people were, the political climate here isn't necessarily the best. I mean, the risk, the fear of people jumping out of a van with masks on, grabbing you and disappearing you, it doesn't necessarily make everybody feel comfortable. I realize some of the wealthier people don't think it's a big deal, but generally speaking, it's not that great of a political climate. And it's not that great of an economic climate. The stock market might be humming, but everything else is pretty much sucking wind. You got restaurants going on down. Jenny, You just had the Yardbird, a very popular Southern style restaurant, which is located right on Washington, just a block south of Lincoln Road. After 15, 20 years, it closed. Yeah. It just suddenly closed. And it made all kinds of headlines because everybody knows that they've been there. I've been there a few times, and I got to tell you, the food was fantastic. Price was a little bit expensive, but the food was fantastic. But to lose these let's say modern institutions in terms of they've been around for, the good 10, 15, 20 years, to lose them is definitely sort of a testament to maybe what the state of the economy is in Miami Beach as well as South Florida in general.
Exactly. And like Segafredo, they were 20 years in business and they closed like 2 months ago. And the places that, I used to go all the time. So it's sad to see it because the reason is because the rents are so high and the owners of these places, they don't care about having it empty neither because they have more money than that. So, and they're going through a huge renovation of Lincoln Road to make it really, really impossible for normal people to enjoy places, stores, restaurants, all these. The master plan that they have is to become really luxurious. So I think that's going to bring a lot of changes in the city and or the city of Miami Beach. And we'll see what happens with the regular people where they go and have fun.
Well, one thing I will say is in 2021, 2022, 2023, when the whole movement really began after the pandemic, or in the heart of the pandemic, state of Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis said you don't have to wear a mask. So a lot of people who fled blue states where masks were mandated, they came, and companies said you didn't have to, you could work from home. You didn't have to come to the office. So everybody came down here. And then Miami Beach, shout out to the Miami Beach. They permitted people to get on police cars on Ocean Drive and twerk, twerk, twerk. And if you ask me, Jenny, that's what pushed Miami Beach over the limit. And that's why everybody wanted to be there, because they all wanted to be able to twerk and take a selfie on top of a Miami Beach cop car.
I don't know about that, but definitely you were able to use the beach and paddleboard and different things that you were able to do during the pandemic that not cities in the world was possible. And one of those things that you always mention is probably the ones that brought all these guys that they were doing the crypto bros and all that.
The crypto bros, yep,
And
yep.
they're actually, I don't know what they are now, but they're roaming around here, but they also had to leave. So it's like a big, we have different times in history. In South Florida, especially Miami Beach and greater downtown Miami, where you see like a wave of people coming and then disappearing, and then another wave of different people comes along. So it's just like, it's the nature of our market.
Definitely a transient market, Jenny. Definitely a transient market. I will say though, they typically say in the journalism world, and I was a journalist for 13 years on staff, and then after that I wrote a column for the Miami Herald for 5 years. In addition, I wrote a column for 5 years with The Real Deal. What they say in the journalism world is 3 is a trend. Jenny, if Miami Beach is so hot, like the sell side people will have us believe, like the Chamber of Commerce will have us believe, you take a look at the index and what's going on Miami Beach, it basically peaked at the end of April. And we got 3 straight months of it heading downward. And typically when you're tracking our index or looking at our index, it's got active listings, it's got pending sales. If active listings go up and pending sales go down, the market gets weaker. If pending sales go up and active listings go down, the market gets stronger. If you're a buyer, you want a weaker market. If you're a seller, you want a stronger market. Jenny, just taking a look at the data, what we can see here is that back in the 29th of April, basically the last recording of our winter buying season, which goes from November to April, Miami Beach came in 11.14 on the index. Where are we today after 3 straight losses? We're down to 9.18. 9.18 today versus 11.14 percentage-wise, probably somewhere in the ballpark of, I don't know, what is that going to be, 15%, 10%, 12%, something like that. And we'll get into it shortly. And then, Jenny, on the vintage side, these are the condos that are at least 30 years old. They were at 9.90 on the 29th of April. Fast forward to today, 7.57. So what does this mean? This means if the market was as hot as the Chamber of Commerce would have you believe, as hot as the sell-side agents would have you believe, this thing should be getting firmer. Why? Because pending sales should be going up and active listings should at least be equal or maybe falling. The opposite is happening, Jenny. The listings are coming down. Why? A lot of people getting low ball offers, and they are insulted. They bought down here. They had to get called back to the office in Wall Street, or they had to go back to Silicon Valley. They're trying to rent it. They're not getting the rent they want. They put the place for sale and they're getting low ball offers. So they let the listings expire or they pull them. And you know what's happening? Well, you would think if the listings are going down and the sales were still as popular as they should be, it should make it a stronger market. The opposite is happening. Pending sales are falling twice as fast as active listings, if you can believe that, Jen.
Yeah, I believe it. Unfortunately, the prices were way too high. I mean, the spike that the prices had at the end of 2021, the beginning of 2022, 23, even 2024, they were outrageous. So the market needs to be corrected. It's impossible to maintain that pricing. And when the people tells you that 20% every year goes 20% up, that's not true. I mean, look at the numbers. So that's not the truth. So, you have to work with the numbers. Pay attention to the stats. That's what it tells us. Obviously, we have very high interest rates. We have buildings going through renovations. We have stores closing. There is a lot of signs that, we are in trouble, pretty much. but that's the opportunity for cash buyers. Cash is going to be king again, as
Well,
always.
and you know, Jen, you raised a good point. Fannie Mae, who's the secondary buyer of mortgages, as of August 3rd, they're no longer accepting limited reviews for condo mortgage applications. And the review has to do with the condo association. Jenny, now you got to go through a full review, which means what? It means it's going to take longer because they got to do all the due diligence. It also means it's going to cost more because you got to do more stuff. It also means more deals are going to not get it done. They're not going to get funded. And as a result, probably the only buyer who's out there, it could be all cash or it could be somebody buying with private financing. And those people typically want a deal, Jen, because they go in when no one else goes in. So that can't be a good, a good trend for any seller trying to get out. Anybody who thought that their one kid was on the honor roll, the other kid was great at soccer, their significant other's good looking, they drive the best car, and everything is perfect. This is one of those moments where they have to come to realize what the reality is versus maybe what they're posting on Instagram.
Yeah, definitely reality check. Somewhat of the reality check, I'm going to call it, where you have to look at the numbers and say, hey, how long I can hold this property for? How many months? How many years? Do I need to sell it? Do I don't need to sell it? That's why you're going to see a lot of people pulling listings of the market because they were probably proving the market to see if they can get whatever they want. To realize that is not the case. And then we're going to have finally a correction. I can't wait.
All right, Jen. So you guys can see how the Miami Beach market has gone. Remember, black is going to be overall market. Blue will be the vintage market. Just kind of how it's moving. But you guys can see here, we've had 3 straight months of drops. 3 is a trend. The market is leaning towards advantage buyers. So if you are a buyer, you might find a window right now. Why? World Cup's over. We're in August. Hurricane season's really starting to get ramped up right now. Locals took their kids on vacation. They're not doing anything right now. You got the Fannie Mae rule kicking in about limited reviews and eliminating that. Jenny, normally after Labor Day, which is the first Monday in September, things start to heat up again leading into the winter buying season in November. Problem is this year we got midterm elections and it is very contentious out there. Based on how the election goes in early November, it could decide the direction of Washington. Who the hell wants to buy a condo if the direction of Washington it could go one way or it could go another way? So you're probably going to have a lot of people sitting on the sidelines. So what does that mean? Sellers aren't going to get their price, most likely. So that means if you were a buyer, Jenny, I think you probably got a 90-day window or so where you pretty much got, open range. You could do whatever you want because come November, once the election's over, first Tuesday in November, then we're going to get into the winter buying season when you start to get casual buyers in town coming here for an event. They come here for vacation. They come here to go on a cruise. They fall in love with it. They start looking. So, Jen, there might be a 90-day window for prospective buyers where basically they can put their arms out almost like, maybe a prisoner eats in jail where, you got to protect your food. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think if the price is correct, we have buyers that are willing to pull the trigger even when it's an election day. Price, top. Money, top. If the price is correct, they don't mind them if whatever is happening in the world, they couldn't care less. There's people that need a place to live. They're tired to paying a lot of money for rentals, and they save the money, and they just see the opportunity. If it's correct, they're going to move. And we're not going to see huge amounts of people, like overtaking the market because of the circumstances of the election day, hard economy. That's something you cannot deny. But I believe that if the price is correct and I start seeing prices that make sense, actually, so that's when the people is actually going to transact.
Yeah, that's when people are going to transact. Jenny, let's go ahead and I'm going to stop sharing this. And what I want to do is I want to show you really quickly a chart related to pricing. So we'll take a look at the pricing really quick, and then we're going to get into the data so everybody can really kind of get a real sense of it. But we're definitely setting the scene for you here. So let me go ahead and pull up that line chart, which is going to basically have pricing. So let me pull that one up for you. That should do it. Yeah, we go, everybody. All right, now you guys can check it out. So what we're looking at here is basically asking prices as well as pending sales prices. These are averages, everybody. So when you put your place on the market, it's a list price. And now when you go under contract, what they do is they call it a pending sale, and then whatever price it was listed at, they go ahead and they track it. So Jenny, what we're seeing here is the black line is going to be the overall asking price, and then the blue line is going to be the vintage 30 years old or older asking price. Now, we've only been tracking this basically since the end of April, the end of the winter buying season. But what you'll notice between the black and the blue lines, these are the active, they're both leaning downward. Jenny, back on the 29th of April, average asking price for a condo in Miami Beach was $1,026. You know what it is today? $951. Granted, it's $75 a foot on $1,000 a foot, but if the market was so strong, it wouldn't be going down, it'd be going up. And this is the average ask. Now, Jenny, on the vintage side, the ones at least 30 years old or older, the ones that faced with the likelihood of a special assessment. Jenny, vintage condos back on 29th of April were coming at $728 a foot. Today, they're coming in at $657 a foot, another $75 a foot or so decrease. Now that one's, somewhere in the ballpark of 10% or so. So Jen, what do you make of that? If the market's so strong, why the hell are asking prices going down in Miami Beach?
The market is not as strong in Miami Beach. I mean,
that's not what the listing agents say. They say it is such a strong market.
Maybe for the mansions that are $40 million and they send one every, couple years, and for the 1% or the 1%ers. So that's a different market. Most definitely exist, and they might doing very well there, but the market for regular buyers on the $1 million and less is what we're talking about here. Maybe 2 million. Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's go ahead. We're going to stop sharing. We gave you guys like the graphics, but you can see again, black and blue, everybody. That's what you're going to watch. See how it's just heading downward. It's leaning. It's the momentum. That has nothing to do with the inventory. This is the pricing averages that are out there. So let me stop sharing that. Now what I want to do, Jen, we're going to share another screen. We are going to share with you, and I think this is important. We're going to go ahead and share with you the stats that back these two charts. So let me pull that up really quick. 1 second. Here it comes. Here we go. Boom. Now you guys can all check it out. So what are we looking at here? We're looking month over month what happened in the the Miami Beach market based on the index. Remember, the index is active listings, pending sales. We run it through a little formula, and we come up with a way in order to track all markets, apples to apples. So, Jen, the vintage market was 9.90 at the end of April, and the overall market was 11.14. Fast forward to today. Jenny, the overall market's 9.18. That is a drop of 17.6%. So that is advantage buyer, 17.6%. Jenny, the vintage market went from 9.90 to 7.57. That's a drop of 24%. Jenny, both markets, vintage and overall, are coming down. Why are they coming down? Simple. Pending sales, which are those deals under contract likely to lead to a closing. Once they close, the numbers will be released 30, 60, 90, 120 days afterwards, and then you guys will all hear about it. Jenny, pending sales are down 30% overall, 34% for vintage. Take a look at the active listings, which have gotten pulled because people are getting lowballed and they're pissed off and they feel disrespected. Jenny, the active listings overall in Miami Beach are down 15%. The vintage active listings are down 14%. So let me repeat that. Basically, you got a 14 to 15% drop in active listings. At the same time, pending sales have dropped between 30 and 34% in Miami Beach.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting because normally when you see less inventory, people tend to think that they're stronger, in the pricing, but it's not the case, which those numbers made me think is whatever I was expecting for the last year. When I see 17%, 15%, that's where I want to be for my buyers.
Well, and let's talk about pricing. So Jenny, on the asking prices, $1,026 a foot is what was asked, and we showed you guys the charts, but let's give you the numbers. $1,026 a foot is what the average asking price of Miami Beach at the end of April, at the end of the winter buying season. Now it's $951. That's a 7.3% drop in average asking prices. Now on the vintage side, we got a 10% drop, going from $728 a foot to $657 a foot. So Jenny, asking prices 7.3% drop overall, 10% on the vintage side. And then you say, okay, fine, they're bringing the prices down, therefore people ought to be stepping up. Here's the problem. the average pending sales price, they went from overall about $11.83 a foot. They're down to $11.58 a foot. They went down $25 a foot, or about 2%.
Yeah.
Vintage went from $594 a foot to $562 a foot, or about 5.4%. So Jenny, even though they're reducing the asking prices, the average pending sales price are coming down as well. And pending sales price do not reflect what it really trades at. So you know the discount's going to be even greater.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what you need for people to get up with the sofa and go and get a condo. And, it's not enough. I mean, 7% on the price difference is good. It's looking better, but, people is expecting less. Therefore, the offers are going to be on the average of 15 to 20% of the asking price. I'm saying, in the general market, not case by case scenario. Obviously, if the listing is well priced, it will sell.
Yeah, it would sell. So let's stop sharing this. Now we're going to get into always the most contentious part, especially with listing agents. We're going to talk about the 1% rule, and we're also going to tell you, how does the 1% rule apply to Miami Beach, everybody? So what is the 1% rule? 1% rule says basically 1 month of rent represents 1% of value. You get $1,000 a month rent, your place is worth $100,000. You get $10,000 a month rent, place is worth $1 million. Let's take a look, Jen, what we got going on in Miami Beach for rental. So I'm going to share my screen with you all. Let me pull it up here, and we'll show you the rental game. And then after that, we'll show you what's the actual pricing is in Miami Beach. All right, here we go, Jen. Here's the rental data. So what are we looking at on the rental side? Let me clean this up a little bit. There we go. Jenny, we got 1,700 places for rent in Miami Beach. They want $3,500 a foot on a median basis. Everybody listen, rental data sucks. It's terrible. Do not rely on it. This is just giving you some perspective. It's the equivalent of licking your finger and being able to predict which way the hurricane path will go. It doesn't recommend a lot, suggests a lot. It's not something to count on, but it will give you, kind of an idea. Like navigating with the stars back in the day. So $3,500 a month, Jenny, is a median ask, which comes out to $4.44 a square foot per month. And Jenny, wouldn't you know it, these landlords who want $3,500 a month, you know how long they've been on the market without getting a lease? 72 days. If it takes them a week or two after somebody signs a lease or goes under pending, Jenny, they're out 3 months of rent.
Yeah.
30 days in a month, 72 days and no tenant. 3,500 doesn't sound like a lot, but obviously it's too much, because if it wasn't, these things would have rented in much less than 72 days and counting.
Yes, most certainly. They only feel the pain when you start getting that vacancy after month 2. You say, oh my God, I really need to lower the price. I really need to rent the place. And it's hard when you're coming from a market that was so expensive and places renting 7 days. Suddenly, it's not the case. They don't have all these, all these people going after these properties anymore. So they are forced to lower the prices, but they have to unfortunately learn the lesson by lowering just a little bit, like, oh, I'm going to lower $50 and then $100 and then another $100. And at the end, you're going to be losing money, because 90 days of vacancy is going to throw your numbers big time.
Where if you, like you said, if you would have come in lower right from the beginning, you would have been rented right away. Because if you have 90 days of no tenant, whatever money you didn't generate, you blend it into the rent you do get, it's probably going to be lower. It's probably going to be lower, because think about it, everybody, 12 months in a year. If you got 90 days of no tenants, 25% of your year was basically vacant. So that's something to keep in mind. So Jen, $3,500 a month is the median asking price. When the place is actually rented, there were 2,200 that rented the first 6 months of the year. They rented for $2,500 a month, median, $357 a foot. It took them 42 days. So Jenny, 42 days is how long it takes in Miami Beach. These people want $3,500, which is an extra $1,000 a month more. They've been on the market 72 days. So there is a disconnect. There's a big disconnect on the asking price, median basis, 40% premium landlords are trying to get on their rentals compared to what stuff rents for. 368 leases were signed and completed first 6 months of the year. Every month, 368 leases per month, first 6 months of the year. divide that what's available, which is 1,700, you get 4.6 months of supply, which is going to be a landlord's market. But Jen, we showed you the index. The index is going down. It's going down. What is that? What do you sort of interpret? What can you take away from this?
Yes, what happens, and I tell you by experience, is that either the renter or the buyer, the first thing they look at when we send listings is how many days is this place being in the market. So it's being the more time they'll be in the market, the weaker the seller or the landlord looks on their eyes. And that's what's going to offer less. So that's why the people take up the listings and then they put them back 2 or 3 weeks later. But realtors that have experience go to the history of the listing, and then you realize that they took it off 2 weeks ago just to make it look newer. So, that's what it is. That's also, there is a lot of people, I mean, like, I don't want to get political or anything, but I know for the fact that a lot of people is getting, going to the hearing in the court that they send back to their country. So there's a lot of vacancies because of that as well. Remember, Miami Beach is a city where a lot of people, foreigners live, and these people that actually have work permits and everything, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to get the W-2s and all that for getting rentals. And I think that's affecting the market, believe it or not.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. That's a powerful message. Jen, last point on this, on the 1% rule, 1 month of rent represents 1% of value. So under that rule, Jenny, median asking price of $3,500 a month means a Miami Beach condo is worth $350,000. And the leases that we're signing for $2,500, that means they actually sell for $250,000. If you just take the middle of it, that means a Miami Beach condo is worth $300,000 based on the rent.
Yeah, I mean, based on the age of the buildings and the quality and all that, I would say it's a perfect assessment. Because remember, we're comparing the market as a whole. So there are places there that are $1 million, and other places that are $250,000. So there you go.
Yeah. Obviously, if you're on the oceanfront side of Collins Avenue or Jimmy Buffett Boulevard or A1A, you're gonna get more money rather than if you're like tucked in somewhere, maybe in North Beach on some shit ass block that floods all the time. So it could go either way. But basically, okay, now we're ready to get into our numbers, Jenny. So let's go ahead, stop sharing this rental data. And now we're going to pull up the numbers, have everybody get a look as to what's going on in Miami Beach. And you guys know $300,000 basically is the going price for a condo based on rental data. So here we go, Jen. This is what it is in all its glory. So let me go ahead and clean this up a little bit. And let's see what we got here. Yeah. See if I can stretch this out. Yeah, there we go, everybody. You guys can see it now. So Jenny, here's what we got going on. 1,522 condos on the market. 69% are vintage. 69% are vintage. In the first 6 months of the year, 901 condos traded. 67% were vintage, Jenny. 67% were vintage. So we break down the market basically we got 3 categories. We got the overall market. Then we got the vintage. We've been telling everybody about 30 years old or older. These are the ones with greater scrutiny, the big special assessments. So, what represents in between? Well, we call it modern condo. So if that condo's up to 29 years old, it's modern. Once it hits 30, it's vintage. So, Jen, here's how it shakes out. On the vintage side, 1,052 vintage, 469 modern. Okay. In terms of sales, you had 600 vintage in the first 6 months of the year. You had 300 modern that traded. We do some rough math. You'll see the vintage works out to about 100 units trading a month. First 6 months of the year. Modern represented about 50. So people are buying vintage condos 2-to-1 over modern condos, 2-to-1. Now, in terms of months of supply, vintage has 10.5 months of supply, making it a buyer's market. And modern has 9.3 months of supply, making it also a buyer's market, but less so. So actually, Jenny, the modern condo segment in Miami Beach is about a month or so stronger than what you're going to find in the vintage side of it. Basically, 69% of listings are vintage, 67% of deals are vintage. The remainder is going to be modern.
Yeah, that's interesting. And probably people don't want to deal with the older property if they can. At the end of the day, it's all about the budget. that you have for buying a property. Because it's just buying the property, it's carrying the property. You know, if the condo is 20 years and less, probably has a pool, you know, common areas, concierge and all that, and the maintenance fees are much higher. You go to the condo in Miami Beach that just have a parking space and maybe a pool or maybe not, that's going to be way less for maintenance. And at the end, everybody's going to do these numbers on the dining table and say how much I pay for insurance, how much I pay for maintenance fees and taxes. And you have to do your budget, and based on that is what you're going to buy.
Jenny, if you take a look at a vintage condo in Miami Beach, the asking price is 53% the overall price, overall market price.
Yeah.
$631,000 a door is the average asking price in Miami Beach. Overall market, $1.4 million. 53% discount off the overall price. Now, Jenny, if you went after a modern condo in Miami Beach, well, you got vintage coming in at $631,000 a door. Jenny, the modern condos are coming in at $3 million a door in the asking price. $3 million a door.
Huge difference between those two segments of the market. Huge.
Now, in terms of the sales getting completed in the first 6 months of the year, the vintage condos that traded, they traded for $546 a foot. $546,000 a unit. So $546,000 a unit is what they traded for, which means you need basically $5,460 a month rent. But we saw, what did they get in 3,000 or so? So you were inflated still on that. Now let's compare it to the sales price of vintage, $546,000 to the overall market. Overall market in Miami Beach is $1.3 million, but the modern market was $2.9 million. So again, I can buy a vintage condo, which is bigger, a better location, as well as self-parking potentially, as long as it's got a signed inspection report and the seller's covering special assessment the way out. Or I could buy a modern condo, which could be 29 years old. Remember, everybody, 30 years is vintage, 29 is modern. Just to keep that in mind. These modern condos, $2.9 million versus a vintage, which is $546,000. So, you know, when the condos trade, basically a vintage condo will trade for 59% less, 59 less than the overall marketplace in Miami Beach.
Yeah, it is. It is what it is. You know, the 1% is very, very elusive in Miami Beach, especially because short-term rentals are harder. There are some buildings that have 30 days, but they don't have the daily rentals like in Miami, and you know, that all this new model of Airbnb condos are in the city. So over there, they're against it. They're trying to protect the hotels. So the 1% is really, really elusive.
Now, finally, price per square foot. Jenny, vintage condo in Miami Beach is $652 a foot asking. A modern condo is $1,651. Jenny, it costs $1,000 a foot more for a modern condo versus a vintage condo. $1,000 a foot. What if that modern condo is 27 years old? Remember, 30 years the marker. Is it worth $1,000 more for a modern condo under 30 years old, say up to 29 years old in Miami Beach?
Well, I think that the majority of those modern condos are condos that are being either knocked down and done again. So there is modern construction, and or they are very well located. They're waterfront, either oceanfront or bayfront. So they are more expensive because of the location and the services and all that. It's just completely different product.
Yeah, completely different product. And then finally, on a price per square foot basis, sales, first 6 months of the year, a Miami Beach condo vintage traded for $548 a foot. A modern condo traded for $1,466 a foot. The overall blended average Miami Beach in the first 6 months of the year is $852 a foot. So, Jenny, in terms of, the asking price versus the average transaction price, we always say that you should have about a 20% spread. This way, if there's some negotiations, you split the difference. The buyer coming in is going to have the seller discounted by 10%, and the seller is going to get a 10% premium over the real price, just generally speaking. So vintage condos are priced 19% above the average. So that suggests they want to compromise. Jenny, the modern condos are priced 12.6%. That suggests the sellers of the modern condos are not very confident. Because if they were very confident, they would have a much bigger spread. And then finally, the overall comes in at 12.6% as well. So I'm not seeing a lot of confidence on behalf of sellers in Miami Beach. Maybe it has to do with the index and what the index was suggesting, that we got 3 straight months in a row where basically pending sales are falling twice as fast as active listings.
Yeah, most definitely. Everybody that actually follow the market, not just the Chamber of Commerce numbers, realize people that work in the industry, they realize that these places are staying a long time. I mean, and sometimes I'm surprised to see certain buildings with the very long days in the market that they're not moving, they're not even pending, and they're not willing to negotiate neither. That's the thing. So we'll see what happens. They're gonna have to give up at some point.
Well, pending sales, you can say are okay. It could be the seller capitulating, could be the buyer capitulating, but you don't want a great way to understand what the buyer interest is. Look at days on market. Jenny, a condo in Miami Beach, a vintage, has been on the market without a contract 178 days on average. A modern condo's been there 188 days. The overall blended rate is 181. Jenny, the ones that were appropriately priced, they went under contract. Well, they were listed. They went under contract. They transacted vintage 116 days versus today's listings 178 days. Jenny, the modern condos that were appropriately priced, they traded in 138 days, the entire process, versus today's listing. They've been there 188 days and counting. So it's obvious buyers are not stepping up at the same pace based on this pricing. So that would suggest that maybe you got some challenges if you are a seller, which isn't a surprise to anybody who's been following us and listening to us. We were telling everybody, if you're a seller, you had to get out last winter. Should have got out by the midway point. Once the Coconut Grove Arts Festival and Miami Beach Boat Show came President's Weekend in February, we told people, cut bait now, get out, because summer's not going to treat you well. A lot of people didn't do it, and the numbers are showing it.
They don't. There's some. It's very weird. Some people, they just take ego. Say, I'm not gonna lose money. You know what I mean? Like, and the more time they are in the market, the more money they lose. So it's just something that you don't. It's hard for people to let it go, and I understand that. So there's a point where 1, 2, 3, 4 people say, okay, put the price down, and you cannot fight the comparables.
You can't fight the comparables. So, Jen, as we sit here in August, we think you probably got a 90-day window as a buyer where you pretty much got free reign to do whatever the hell you want because people aren't coming to town. You got midterm elections coming up in November. It's probably going to be, like you said, a summer of a reality check. I think it's a wasted summer if you look at all the data. But tell me where you stand on Miami Beach after seeing all the data, after seeing the index, seeing all of that. Are you a bull with the horns going up? Are you a bear with that claw coming down? Or are you sitting on the sidelines and waiting and seeing? Jenny, what's your take on Miami Beach? And if you want to parse it out for vintage versus modern versus overall, however you want to do it, give us your take. A bull, bear, or sitting on the sidelines on Miami Beach?
Definitely a bull, especially on the vintage market, because if we can get something completely certified, like a certified car, the same thing, then it's a good buy. You're not gonna lose money. And this is the time for picking and choose what you like. The problem with the people thinking about the bottom, and this happened back in the time, people are waiting the bottom price. You never know what it is. The bottom price is the one that you feel comfortable and you think that you're not gonna lose money because you're being well advised by people like us.
That is Jenny Huerta. She's a broker owner of CVR Realty. Check out her website, cvrrealty.com. If you guys are interested in vintage condos, she's got a team specializes in vintage condos. So a lot of people are going for the vintage. They simply make a lot more sense. You guys could see from pricing here in Miami Beach, significantly cheaper going after a vintage, better location, more square footage, generally speaking, and sometimes a possibility to self-park. That'll really be based on the building, and it'll be based on the neighborhood. So check out her website if you're interested in condos, cvrrealty.com. I'm Peter Zalewski, condo consultant, expert witness, founder of the Miami Condo Investment Club. Remember, everybody, Mondays, 4 o'clock, we go live. We are talking condos on Miami Condo Mondays. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoy your summer. If you're a buyer, don't forget low ball, low ball, low ball. And if you're a seller, you need to figure out how to get until we are talking about turkey, stuffing, and cranberries because chances are nothing good is happening for you based on the current market trends. So take care, everybody. We'll catch up soon. Ciao, ciao.